Antec has a long history when it comes to making PC cases. Myself and the eTeknix staff built some of our first gaming PCs in Antec cases over 20 years ago, and have built a fair few systems in Antec cases ever since, not counting the dozens of reviews that we've done for them in the last 15 or so years. I think it's fair to say we know a lot about Antec cases here at eTeknix. Now, when it comes to mini ITX cases, they have an interesting history, as it's not a form factor that they really give much attention to for the PC gaming market. But when they do, it's usually very interesting, such as the Antec Cube Razer case that we reviewed many years ago. Now, Mini ITX doesn't get the love it deserves in 2024, with seemingly only a handful of motherboards getting released each generation in this form factor. And I guess the same can be said for cases. However, Antec is giving a lot of love to Mini ITX today as they reveal their latest love note to small form factor PC enthusiasts. But before we get into that, here's a quick word from this video's sponsor.
I'm never going to be an esports gamer. I never get any kills.
I wouldn't be so sure of that.
Is that Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com?
Yes, my son, it is me, Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com.
What are you doing here?
I'm here to bestow upon you a gift that will transform you into a true gamer. With a 24.5-inch Full HD screen, 240Hz refresh rate, 0.5 millisecond response time, AMD FreeSync Premium, and height adjustability, you'll be gaming in the big leagues in no time.
Thank you.
No problem, my son. Why don't you check out the link in the description below to find out more.
Now, today sees us taking a look at the Performance 1M, a name that really got me interested because the Performance 1 that released in early 2023 had me seeing it as potentially the best case of the year. So with the Performance 1M forming part of their performance lineup, it promises to combine a sleek, flexible and easy to use design with a key focus on air cooling rather than liquid cooling, using a sandwich style layout, separating the case into two adjustable chambers. But more on that in a moment. For compact workspaces, something you can take to LAN gaming events, or just a love for a more compact gaming PC in general, the Performance 1M is, well, delightfully small, coming in at just 19 litres and measuring 424 by 175 by 260 millimetres. Now, of course, Mini ITX cases have been smaller than this, but let's keep in mind that the bulk of the length here is just to warrant the space required for a modern graphics card, which are often, well, pretty massive. Now, Antec says that it will support a graphics card of up to 350mm in length, so you can get something pretty decent in here. As for instance, an RTX 4090 Founders comes in at around 304mm, so no issue there. And the same for AMD with the reference card, and those from AIBs will also have no issues either. Just keep in mind that some of the more crazy aftermarket versions, like the Asus ROG 4090, which does come in slightly over the limits, so as always, check before you place that all-important order. Now, as for GPU depth, well, that's where the Performance 1M gets quite clever. It uses an adjustable tray design on the interior, allowing it to be moved to accommodate different GPU depths. However, there is a bit of a trade-off to consider. The 1M essentially has 125mm to play with between the CPU cooler height and the GPU thickness, and the tray between them can be moved to compensate for thicker GPUs or taller CPU coolers. Now, there are limitations to this, but it means you can have up to an 85mm tall cooler and 40mm thick GPU, or 47mm tall cooler and 78mm thick GPU, or anything in between those numbers. So you just have to, well, essentially do the maths and just cut that up as you see fit. Now, if all that does sound too technical, it's basically got support for dual or triple slot graphics cards. But again, measure and everything before you actually place the order. Now, obviously that does mean you're going to need a low profile CPU cooler either way, as you're not going to be putting a Noctua D15 or the like in here, that's for sure. Furthermore, there's no liquid cooling support, so Antec have had to make some compromises, shall we say. But in all honesty, I'm fine with that. Now, some of you will likely turn this video off now and feel that this case just isn't for you, and well, that is understandable, as many of you love your AIO coolers. However, I'm still a big fan of air cooling, and well, always have been, and there's plenty of great options to consider on the market. Though I will admit, Antec are somewhat lacking in that department, with the only current model that I can find being the T120. So if you're wanting to keep with the whole Antec ecosystem, you may be a little bit out of luck, at least for now. Who knows, maybe Antec are going to release something new in the future. Now, in terms of the form factor, Mini ITX is a popular choice for people who want to show off their build. Sure, a monolithic eATX PC case might be a good choice, But, well, in the real world, we don't all have the office space or a desk big enough to have one of those sitting on top of it. Whereas with the Performance 1M, you can easily accommodate it on top of your desk where you can see it. Plus, it's a nice place for a case, as you can easily access the USB ports, perform maintenance, and it's not just on the floor sucking dust out of your carpet. Now, this is where things actually do get interesting, as we actually have 3 side panels here, and this is kind of by design. Antec are looking for feedback from us and the community as to what side panel they should offer, from a tempered glass option, so you can have it look pretty and see that wallet-killing GPU purchase in all its glory. The mesh panel, giving you a balance of visuals with some additional airflow to help improve the overall system performance. And, well, the mixed panel, which combines part glass and part mesh, so you can still admire your graphics card without completely starving it of airflow. Which one is right for you? Well, it's hard to say. But for me, personally, I'd be going for the mixed mesh and glass option, as it really is, I guess, the best of both worlds. There is more to say about these side panels, but we'll come back to that towards the end of the video. Now, in terms of the panels, and what's actually interesting is that Antec have deployed a symmetrical panel design. That means that the left and right panels are identical, and you can swap out whichever panel is on whichever side. So if you fancy a glass panel to view your motherboard instead of your GPU, then you can do that, and vice versa. So I'd maybe like it if Antec offered up the ability to buy the panels separately, but logistically that can be an absolute nightmare to ship all around the world. So short of opening up the ability to buy them through a web store, it's likely not feasible, and explains why they asked us for our feedback. So again, comment below with which one you prefer, and well, that may be the one that we actually see come to market. Now, aside from the tempered glass panel, all of them are aluminium over steel, so everything is robust and well made. And I think that shows in the visual aspect too, as well, it's a stunning looking case. It feels great too, and well, in all honesty, it's actually pretty heavy, coming in at 4.9 kilograms, just giving it a premium vibe throughout. I don't know what it is, but when a product is heavier, it just feels better. Now, the case is largely gunmetal on the exterior, but the front and back panels are both just a little bit darker in colour than the rest. And there's also a small bit of red on the power button, where you'll also find a single USB Type-C port for the front panel I/O. Now, in terms of the front, I am actually a little bit torn, as while it does look, let's say, understated, professional and somewhat premium, I think I would have actually preferred the same ventilated pattern as the side panels in the top, though I do get that it wouldn't really aid in airflow due to the location of the GPU and the CPU cooler, so maybe that's why they've done that. Now, speaking of the top, there's another hint of red up here just to kind of break things up a little, and it's a simple small tab that just makes it quick and easy to open up the case, allowing for easier maintenance, and well, this keeps the same ventilated pattern design as the rest of the case, which I really like. Now, when it comes to mini ITX, cooling is generally a tougher job than a mid-tower or full-tower case because, well, they have much more room for air to actually flow around. So to combat that, they've put ventilation pretty much everywhere, including the top and bottom panels, of which the bottom can actually harness the ventilation, as there's space for up to 2 120mm or 140mm fans to help push air up onto the major components. Now, speaking of the interior, it's quite a difference, with a deep red frame that provides a stark contrast when you open it up, or when you kind of peek through the side panels. The interior section, as mentioned, is quite modular, with a sandwich design separating the case, where you'll have components on each side. On one side, you have room for a mini ITX motherboard, a low-profile air cooler, and either an SFX or SFXL power supply, which, as we know, are getting kind of more popular and a lot more powerful. The PSU is positioned near the front of the case and uses an internal pass-through cable to provide mains power to it. Something that we've seen before on cases like this from brands like Silverstone, for instance. So nothing new, but it's a solution that works, so I'm not going to knock it. Now, on the other side of the tray, there's a massive space for your graphics card and an included built-in riser cable, which allows the GPU to be mounted behind the motherboard. And again, you can move the middle mounting plate to find the balance between GPU thickness and CPU cooler height that suits your specific requirements. It's the fine details here that I actually like, with a ruler at each end of the tray, so you can fine-tune the positioning of the tray. Again, this just, well, to me, adds an element of premium aesthetics to the case, and, well, I'm all for that. Now, one thing I really like is the ability to actually strip it down pretty extensively, so much so that you can completely remove the inner frame of the case to make working on things just a little bit easier. Do bear in mind, though, that the opening to get the frame back into the case is narrower than the space inside the case itself, so you may have difficulty reassembling if you have your GPU installed prior to reassembling the case. And yes, we found that out the hard way. Now, from our experience, it actually doesn't really make sense removing everything to install the components, and instead you should just build the system inside the case. Though, I guess I do like the option of being able to remove everything, making it perfect for modders or those who, I don't know, maybe want to spray things up a little bit and customize it a little. Now, as many ITX boards have got more extensive, there is generally the ability to install at least two M.2 drives. Though for those who are maybe still holding on to 2.5-inch drives, there is actually space for one in the front, which is held in place in a rather unique way. Instead of a caddy or a way of screwing it down, it uses two Velcro straps to essentially bungee it in place. A simple and novel way of doing things, which is, I guess, perfect for SSDs with no moving parts, though it may lead to some noise if using, old spinning rust. Though I doubt anyone would actually be using a mechanical drive here anyway, but definitely something to consider. Personally, I would have liked the front panel to actually incorporate the same ventilated structure as the rest of the case, and instead, put a fan there. Though I guess that would hinder the ability to have longer GPUs. But I think it just makes a bit more sense, even if a slim fan was needed. But this could also potentially bump the price of the case up too, which we will talk about later on in the video. Beyond that, well, there's not really much else to the case. After all, it is quite small. So I think we've, kind of seen all of it, other than the feet on the bottom, but nothing really too exciting there. It just helps elevate it. Now, there is actually a lot more to come with Antec's lineup of performance products, and they're pushing what they call future enhancements and expansion. There will be more side panel options on the way beyond the one that comes pre-installed, whichever one that may be. And, they essentially want to introduce customizable side panels with different finishes, and maybe even user design graphics, showing that they want to increase the longevity on the case and the lineup of the performance series as a whole. On top of this, according to Antec, there's new accessory kits coming which will allow for additional or upgraded fan mounts, as well as additional ARGB integration. Modular parts will allow for more I/O configurations, rear panel options, and aesthetic choices too. So I guess there's a lot to come, though when that may be is currently unknown at this point. Antec also vaguely says that they will explore compatibility expansions to adapt to new advancements and standards for storage or connectivity. But what that may entail remains to be seen, but I guess exciting stuff nonetheless, even if it does at this point sound a little bit like marketing bump. Now, in terms of actually building a system inside the case, it is actually pretty unique. And while we've dealt with similar cases in the past, there's enough new engineering going on to take things to the next level. Now, I will be honest, I do think some first-time builders may struggle somewhat, as finding the balance between GPU thickness and maintaining enough height for a quality CPU cooler could be a bit of a specification comparing headache, at least for some users. Fortunately for us, we've got shelves full of stuff, and I guess you could say we've got a little bit of technical knowledge. So we didn't have too much trouble finding a combination that worked for us. We chose the RTX 4080 Super Founder Edition, which comes in at 60mm thick, and paired it with the Noctua NH-L9i that sits at only 37mm thick. These are paired with the ROG Z790i gaming Wi-Fi, an Intel Core i9-14900K, some Clev Crass V 7600MHz RGB memory, and a Clev C910 M.2 2TB SSD, all powered by the Antec SF850X power supply and kept cool with a pair of Antec Nova 120mm PWM fans, which gives us a pretty potent system in this small form factor. Now, in terms of cable management, for this type of case with plenty of space around the power supply to work with and lots of hidden space under and behind the graphics card, it was actually surprisingly easy to make a fairly clean looking system pretty quickly. However, with that said, you'll still get the most mileage from a fully modular power supply that comes with short cables, or by using custom short cables to achieve a more aesthetically pleasing result. But it all depends on which side panel is being used, as it just, might not be the most important decision you make, depending on if you can see it or not. Now, it was easy to get everything adjusted and installed too, as even though the case is unique, everything is pretty straightforward once you know your clearances are fine. The PSU obviously goes in one place, the included riser cable makes the GPU installation as easy as you could wish for, and there's airflow all over the case, so that really wasn't a concern either. And considering ITX motherboards only have 4 screws, it shouldn't really take too long to get everything fitted. When it comes to temperatures and noise levels, this will largely be dictated by the hardware that you actually use. Some GPUs run quieter or cooler than others, and the same goes for the power supply and the processor. Now, there is room, as I mentioned, in the bottom of the case for a pair of 120mm or 140mm fans, and again, the type and quality of fans you use will have a big impact on the cooling and acoustic performance of the case. Now, to see how good or bad the cooling actually is, we installed our cooling setup consisting of a Gigabyte Z590i Aorus Ultra with an Intel Core i5 11600K that's being cooled by a Noctua NH-L9X65 with 16GB of Corsair Vengeance Pro SL memory. We also have an EVGA RTX 3050XC for our graphics card and a WD Black 250GB NVMe for storage. With the system, we were able to get some pretty impressive results considering the size of the case. During our Prime 95 Furmark torture test, the Performance 1M did quite well, ranking in the upper half of our results. It recorded a lower idle temperature compared to the two larger NZXT flow cases specifically designed for airflow and matched their performance under load. For the CPU, idle, the temperature was a fair bit higher, but still within reasonable levels, especially when you consider the size of some of the other cases that we've tested against. And at load, it's towards the lower end of our temperature results. So again, for a case of this size, pretty damn impressive. Now, the all-important GPU at idle again comes in strong at 32.5 degrees, while load ends up sitting right in the middle, again with bigger cases with better airflow actually performing worse. Then, looking at the SSD temperature, this is an area where typically smaller form factor cases do worse. And the Antec Performance 1M is no different at both idle and load, so nothing out of the ordinary as it sits as the second hottest case that we've tested. Now, worst case scenario out of the way and moving over to gaming, our chipset temperature comes in on the higher end of the scale as the second hottest case tested. Again, but at 48.9 degrees, it's nothing to worry about and comes in fairly close to the likes of other bigger cases like the NZXT H9 Flow. Now, for the CPU temperature, things are looking pretty good at 44.5 degrees, which matches that of the Divider 500 TG Air from Thermaltake and puts it right in the middle of our standings. So again, pretty good overall for a case of this size. Now, the GPU, which during gameplay is the component that gets the hottest, still remains pretty cool overall at 46.7 degrees. Again, matching a larger case from the competition that is actually specifically designed for airflow. Then the SSD, which again is generally pretty bad on small form factor cases, sees it coming in at the hottest result we've seen, but even that being said, 59.2 degrees is still within safe limits and wouldn't lead to any thermal throttling. Though for context, our SSD in our test system is actually on the rear of the board and doesn't have a heatsink, so this really is worst case scenario. And again, if there was a fan at the front and it was ventilated, this, could completely change. Now, with temperatures, acoustics go hand in hand, and it's here where idle is one of the better cases that we've tested at just 35.2 decibels. Though this was expected considering there's no fans in this case as standard, so instead it's the noise from the CPU cooler alone. Then at load, it sits perfectly in the middle and comes in close to the NZXT H1, which is another mini ITX based system, and I guess what you could argue as the closest type of system that we've actually tested when compared to this. So, some pretty impressive results overall. Now, it was able to compete with the bigger boys when it came to temperatures and acoustics. Obviously, adding in some fans would help bring the temperatures down, but you'd be sacrificing on acoustics, which, in all honesty, I'm all for, because you do have choices when it comes to fans, so you could get some that prioritise noise being as silent as possible, while still giving you huge amounts of airflow. Now, overall, I actually really like this case, and while some will see, I guess, the only downside being the lack of support for liquid cooling, personally, I don't really care. As if you want that, there are products on the market to fit your needs. This is built to be air-cooled, and I appreciate that they've chosen a direction and just run with it. Also, liquid cooling would just make the form factor bigger, and, I love the overall shape and size of this case as it is, even if it is a little on the heavy side. But again, that's a testament to its quality. So, trade-offs. Now, the Antec Performance 1M takes a lot of the features that we've seen in the Enthusiast Mini ITX cases market in the past and delivers them in a premium quality, well-engineered and thought-out product that really speaks for itself. Now, I won't lie, as this isn't going to be for everyone's taste, but I appreciate the modular design on offer here and the prospect of being able to modify the internal configuration as well as the whole side panel configuration. Overall, the P1M can be adapted to the needs of my build and also grow with my needs to a degree as they may change over time. So if you are looking for a great looking case, premium build quality and about as much flexibility as you could possibly cram into an 8-litre small form factor PC case, then I think you'll find a lot to love about the Performance 1M. But there is a bit of a downside. I say downside, but as always, I'll be playing devil's advocate. The price of the Antec P1M is $249 US, £249 and 299 euros. So it's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And if I hadn't seen it in the flesh, I'd be dismissing it pretty quickly. But after having it in my hands, I can see why it comes in at that price, as it's not a cheap, nasty product. It is structurally and aesthetically, a piece of art. The materials used, the paintwork, and just the overall design all give a sense of value to it. And add in the fact that you get a riser cable included, there is some extra added worth there too. And well, it's no different to what we've seen from other brands in the past who have made similar, yet very different, small form factor cases. So let me know below if you think the price is actually good for what you get here, or is it slightly off the mark? Now, before we close up on this video, I do want to circle back around and talk about those side panels again. Because, well, Antec haven't actually decided quite yet on what to ship out the case with, and are looking for feedback on what people think, which is where you can help out. If you have any particular opinions on what the case should come with, then leave a comment down below so Antec knows exactly what the community wants to see. Personally, I like the combo side panel, but I can see an argument for all of them, but more so for the one with ventilation, which is also the one that we tested with. But I would maybe also like to see Antec toying with that idea of a web store. But logistically, I'm not exactly sure how well this would work. But I will say this, based on what we've seen from Antec as of late and what we've seen here today, I definitely think they're on the right track with the performance lineup. And well, I'm eager to see what they do next. For now, that's going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, a like and a sub to the channel would be amazing. And if you love what we do, then you can help support us over on Patreon, where you'll get a ton of exclusive benefits, including behind the scenes content, bi-weekly game nights, meetups at the eTeknix offices, and so much more. The link is, as always, down below. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys.